I woke up to loud shouting from my neighbor. Not just any neighbor, Barbara, the self-proclaimed ruler of our block. She was standing at the edge of my yard, her face as red as a tomato, screaming like someone had stolen her lunch. But the real kicker? Her shiny, brand-new SUV was stuck in the middle of a giant trench I had legally dug around my driveway. The trench was equipped with a fully operational, medieval-style drawbridge that I could raise and lower at my convenience. 2 weeks ago, none of this would have made sense. Back then, I was a regular homeowner, just trying to enjoy a peaceful life, maybe fire up the grill on the weekends. But peace was hard to come by with an HOA president who treated the neighborhood like it was her personal empire. Barbara was the kind of person who measured your lawn with a ruler, fined you for the wrong shade of gray on your shutters, and sent nasty letters if your car had a speck of dirt on it. I had dealt with her antics before, but I never expected it to escalate into a full-blown battle. It all began one morning when I stepped outside, coffee in hand, to find Barbara's oversized SUV parked right across my driveway. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she just pulled over for a second. But as I got closer, I saw her standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed, that smug look on her face she wore whenever she was about to make my life miserable. "Morning, Barbara," I said, trying to stay calm. "Your car is blocking my driveway." She grinned like a cat about to pounce. "Oh, I know," she said sweetly. "There have been complaints about your driveway." I blinked. "Complaints? From who?" "That's private," she said, waving her hand like it didn't matter. "But we've decided your driveway doesn't meet HOA standards." I looked at my driveway. It was just a regular concrete slab. Nothing special, but certainly not violating any rules. "That's ridiculous. There's nothing wrong with it." "Well," Barbara said, inspecting her nails, "unfortunately, the HOA has the final say. Until we conduct a review, I'll need to keep my car here to prevent further violations." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "You're kidding, right?" "Nope," she said, pulling out a clipboard and writing something down. "And just so you know, if you try to tow my car, that's harassment." I wanted to argue, scream, or do something, but I knew Barbara. She thrived on confrontation. She was hoping I'd lose my temper so she could add more fines to my plate. So I took a deep breath, nodded, and went back inside. The next few days were a nightmare. Every morning, I woke up to find her car still blocking my driveway. The HOA did nothing. When I called the towing company, they refused, citing some vague community agreement. Meanwhile, Barbara walked around like she'd won the lottery, acting like my property was hers. Then came the fines. Apparently, I was now being penalized for neglecting driveway maintenance. Because I couldn't use it, the HOA deemed it an infraction. Every time I checked my mailbox, there was another letter demanding payment. It was maddening, but I wasn't the type to just let it slide. If Barbara wanted to fight, I was ready to outsmart her. So I did what I do best, research. If the HOA was going to use its rules against me, I'd find a loophole. After digging through zoning laws and property codes, I found it, a single line that changed everything. It turned out there were no restrictions on adding security features to private property. I could legally build a barrier around my driveway as long as it wasn't permanent. I double-checked, triple-checked, and even called a lawyer friend to confirm. It was foolproof. That's when I decided to have some fun. The next day, I rented an excavator, hired a few workers, and told them I wanted a deep, wide trench around my driveway. Not a small ditch, a full-on moat. They thought I was nuts, but money talks. By the time the sun set, my driveway was surrounded by a 4-foot-deep trench, wide enough to stop any car from getting across. The next morning, Barbara stormed over, looking like she was ready to gloat. But when she saw her SUV stuck in the middle of the trench, her face went from smug to shocked. "What is this?" she yelled. "Oh, just some security upgrades," I said, barely holding back a smile. "HOA rules say I can do it." Barbara's eye twitched. "You can't just dig a hole around my car." "Actually, I can," I replied. "This is my property, and since you refused to move, I had no choice but to build around you." She looked like her brain had short-circuited. "This is illegal." "Nope," I said, pulling out a printout of the zoning laws. "Perfectly legal. I even got a permit. The city approved it." Barbara's jaw tightened, and I could see her about to explode. "You'll regret this," she hissed. The HOA won't let this slide. I shrugged. Guess we'll see. I turned and walked back inside, leaving her standing there, fuming. But I wasn't done yet. The trench was just the start. If Barbara thought that was the end, she had another thing coming. I was in the process of designing a drawbridge. The next morning, I was woken up by angry pounding on my front door. I already knew who it was. Barbara was standing there, red-faced and furious. The moment I opened the door, she pointed a finger at me, ready to unleash her wrath. "You need to fill in that hole right now," she shouted. I sipped my coffee slowly, enjoying the way I twitched at my nonchalant response. "Oh, you mean the trench? Sorry, can't do that. It's a legal security measure." Barbara let out a sound somewhere between a growl and a scream. "You have 24 hours to fix this, or I will make sure the HOA fines you into oblivion." I pretended to think it over. That's interesting, because I was actually planning some more improvements. She narrowed her eyes. "What kind of improvements?" I grinned. "A drawbridge." Her mouth dropped open, then snapped shut. She stared at me like I was out of my mind. "You can't put a drawbridge in a suburban neighborhood." "Sure, I can," I said. "I already checked the rules. As long as it's a temporary structure and not a permanent gate, I'm good to go. Plus, it'll keep my driveway safe." Barbara looked like she was ready to explode, but instead, she stormed off, muttering threats about city inspectors and lawsuits. I wasn't worried. I'd done my homework. For once, I was actually looking forward to the fight. The next few days were spent gathering materials and hiring contractors. All I needed was some strong wood, metal hinges, and a pulley system. I even recorded the whole process, just in case this became an internet sensation. As construction moved forward, Barbara ramped up her efforts. She called city inspectors who came to try and shut me down, but after seeing everything was legal, they left shaking their heads. She tried organizing a petition with the neighbors, but most of them were tired of her too. She even tried to block my contractors from entering the neighborhood, but one of them turned out to be the brother of a city councilman. When the drawbridge was finally done, it was a sight to behold. A sturdy wooden platform controlled by a simple pulley system that I could raise and lower at will. I tested it, pulling the rope and watching with satisfaction as the bridge lifted, sealing off my driveway. Barbara, of course, went ballistic. "This is ridiculous. You can't have a medieval fortress in the middle of our neighborhood." "It's not a fortress," I said. "It's a security feature. HOA rules encourage these kinds of improvements." She sputtered in disbelief and stormed off. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Later that night, I heard rustling outside. As I peered out the window, ready for whatever Barbara would throw my way next, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The battle was far from over, but I'd played my hand well. She could try to rally the HOA, drag city inspectors over, or even launch a petition, but in the end, the rules were on my side. I had outsmarted her at every turn. The trench and drawbridge were just the beginning. This neighborhood was going to get a lot more interesting. And Barbara? She had no idea what was coming next.